The HT-2 holds a straightforward place in Indian aviation history as the first aircraft designed and built entirely by Hindustan Aeronautics Limited. It was a simple two-seat piston engine trainer intended to give student pilots their first hours in the air. Powered by a Cirrus Major engine producing around 155 horsepower, it was neither fast nor particularly capable, but that was not its purpose. First flown in 1951, it was produced in modest numbers and served the Indian Air Force through the late 1950s before being phased out. Its significance lies less in performance and more in proving that Indian engineers could take a design from paper to flight. The Krishak was a single-engine liaison and observation aircraft developed in the late 1950s for use by Indian Army aviation. It was a light, high-wing monoplane designed to operate from unprepared strips and forward areas carrying 2 occupants. Powered by a Continental engine, it was unremarkable in performance, but suited to the low-speed, low-altitude reconnaissance and communication roles it was built for. The name translates to farmer in Hindi. Production numbers were small and the type was retired without leaving a significant operational legacy, but it represented one of HAL's early attempts at designing an aircraft to a specific service requirement. The HF-24 Marut was India's first domestically designed jet combat aircraft and the most ambitious project HAL had undertaken up to that point. Development began in the 1950s under German designer Kurt Tank, and the aircraft first flew in 1961. It was a transonic, twin-engine fighter bomber capable of reaching roughly Mach 1.02 in a shallow dive, though it fell short of true supersonic performance in level flight. The core limitation was its engine, the Rolls-Royce Orpheus, which was never powerful enough to push the airframe to its intended performance. Attempts to fit an afterburner or find a suitable alternative engine failed. Despite this, the Marut saw combat during the 1971 war with Pakistan in the ground attack role, where it performed adequately. Around 140 were built. It was retired in 1990. The HPT-32 Deepak was a two-seat piston-engine primary trainer designed to replace the HT-2 and standardize basic flying training in the Indian Air Force. It first flew in 1977 and entered service in the 1980s. Powered by a Lycoming engine, it was aerobatically capable and used for initial screening and basic instruction. The type's record was damaged significantly by a series of fatal accidents, leading to a grounding in 2009. Investigations pointed to fuel system issues and aging airframes. The Indian Air Force eventually retired it and sought a replacement, with the HT-T40 later filling that gap. The Deepak's operational history was long, but ended under a cloud of safety concerns. The HJT-16, named Kiran, was India's first domestically developed jet trainer. It entered service in 1964 and remained in use for decades, serving in both basic and advanced training roles. Powered by a single Rolls-Royce Viper turbojet, it was a straightforward aircraft without radar or complex avionics, making it well suited to its training mission. The armed variant saw use with the Surya Kiran aerobatic display team. The Kiran was not a high-performance aircraft by any measure, but it filled a genuine need reliably over a long service life, a reasonable benchmark for a trainer. The HA-31 Basant was a light agricultural aircraft designed specifically for aerial application tasks such as crop dusting and pest control. It first flew in 1972 and was a straightforward, low-wing single-engine design built around utility rather than performance. It was not intended for military use and represents one of the few times HAL produced a purely civilian working aircraft. The Basant was operated by Indian state agricultural agencies and saw limited but practical service. Production was small and the type is now retired. It is rarely discussed in the context of HAL's broader output, but it is a distinct original design in the company's catalogue. The Ajeet, meaning unconquered, was HAL's heavily modified development of the license-built fallen Gnat. While the Gnat had been imported and assembled under license, the Ajeet incorporated a redesigned wet wing for increased fuel capacity, updated avionics, improved weapons pylons, and a stronger undercarriage. It first flew in 1977. The changes were significant enough that most accounts treat it as a separate type. It served in the Indian Air Force as a light fighter and ground attack aircraft before being retired in the late 1980s. The Ajeet demonstrated that HAL could take an existing platform and meaningfully evolve it, though the underlying airframe was still of British origin. The HTT-40 is a turboprop basic trainer developed to replace the HPT-32 Deepak following its troubled retirement. Development was prolonged, with the first flight achieved in 2016 after years of delays. It is powered by a Honeywell TPE-331 engine and is designed to handle the initial training phases currently conducted on the Pilatus PC-7 Mark II, which India procured as a stopgap. The HTT-40 faced scrutiny over its development timeline and competition from foreign alternatives already in service. As of recent years, the Indian Air Force has placed orders for the type, though full-scale service entry has been gradual. The Dhruv, which translates to Polestar, is a twin-engine multi-role helicopter developed as India's primary domestic rotary platform. It first flew in 1992 and entered service in the early 2000s. The Advanced Light Helicopter, as it is formally known, is used by all 4 Indian armed services as well as the Coast Guard. It has been exported to several countries, though some customers, notably Ecuador, grounded their fleets following crashes. The Dhruv has faced criticism over reliability and maintenance issues, and its development was substantially supported by Eurocopter, which provided design assistance. It is nonetheless the most operationally significant helicopter HAL has produced to date. The light combat helicopter, named Prachand, is a dedicated attack helicopter developed by HAL for operations at high altitude. Its development was driven in part by the Kargil conflict, which exposed gaps in India's ability to deploy armed rotary assets in mountainous terrain. It first flew in 2010 and was formally inducted into service in 2022. It is derived from the Dhruv's airframe, but extensively redesigned with a tandem cockpit, a narrow fuselage, and a weapons suite, including rockets, air-to-air missiles, and a nose-mounted gun. Altitude performance is a stated strength, having been tested above 15,000 feet. Production numbers remain modest, and the type is still in the early stages of widespread deployment. The HJT-36, named Sitara, has had one of the most troubled development histories in HAL's catalogue. Intended as an intermediate jet trainer to bridge the gap between the Kiran and the Advanced Hawk, it first flew in 2003. Over the following 2 decades, it faced repeated delays related to its engine, the LASEC 04H20, structural issues, and changing Indian Air Force requirements. Multiple target dates for service entry have passed without result. The program has not been formally cancelled, but has been effectively stalled for years. The Indian Air Force has continued operating the Hawk in the role the Sitara was meant to fill. The Tejas is a single-engine light combat aircraft developed under the Light Combat Aircraft program to replace aging MiG-21s. Development began in the 1980s, and the aircraft first flew in 2001, though initial operational clearance was not achieved until 2013, and full clearance came in 2019. The delays spanned decades and involved extensive work on flight control software, engine sourcing, the General Electric F404, and weapons integration. It is a delta-wing design using fly-by-wire controls with no conventional tail. It is subsonic in clean configuration and not optimized for beyond visual range engagements without external systems. The Indian Air Force has placed orders for the improved Tejas Mark 1A, which addresses several avionics and radar shortcomings. The light utility helicopter is a single-engine helicopter developed to replace the aging Cheetah and Chetak platforms in Indian service. It first flew in 2016 and is intended for roles including reconnaissance, casualty evacuation, and logistical support in high-altitude environments. It is powered by a turbomecha Ardiden engine and is designed to operate in the Himalayas, a key operational requirement. The program has progressed more steadily than several of HAL's other recent projects, with service entry orders placed by the Army. It represents the lighter end of HAL's current rotary portfolio alongside the Dhruv and Prachand.